Hi, welcome to BariNation, where we support the bariatric community with humor, humility, and honesty.
You've just tuned into a podcast that welcomes you into a community, a resource center, and a safe place that powers your journey towards personal wellness.
Our goal is you leave us today feeling hopeful, inspired, and ready to live your best bariatric life.
Hi, friends. Welcome back to the BariNation podcast. Today, we have a very special guest who we have never had the honor of interviewing before. Carah Horn is joining us, and we have an amazing conversation lined up for you. This is going to be a 3-part conversation. She is a passionate professional and advocate for people suffering from the disease of obesity. And we want to know how she was inspired to enter into obesity medicine. We want her take on this crisis of care that she is seeing occurring right now in the world. And then she's going to share with us this amazing metaphor or this way of living for bariatric patients who are post-op and maybe struggling with the idea of having to do this forever. So there's going to be a lot that we cover in today's episode. But before we get to it, I'm going to turn the microphone over to you, Carah, to introduce yourself.
All right. Hi. So like I said, I'm Carah. I'm a nurse and a program coordinator at Orlando Health. I've been a nurse this year for 20 years. I feel like I've been saying almost 20 years for a very long time. So it's interesting that that's a real thing now. That's reality. I started out in labor and delivery and ER when I was at the bedside and transitioned to transplant. And was a living donor coordinator. Loved what I was doing, actually, as a living kidney transplant coordinator. And my director was asked to start a bariatric program. And he tapped me and said, "Hey, I want you to start this with me." And I said, "Bariatrics?" It's like, I'm doing life change here with kidney care. I'm like transforming lives. Why on earth would you want me to go do like cosmetic surgery? Which is, was the idea that I had. I knew nothing about it except for some bad experiences that, we've all probably heard about, right, over time. And he said, well, think about those patients, right, that are on dialysis that our dietitians aren't able to help by, just within nutrition itself to lose the weight to qualify for transplant, because you had to be for kidneys, a BMI of 35 or lower to be able to be listed. And I was like, oh, okay. Okay. So that was the hook. It's like, I'll do it for them. And was still a little reticent, trying to keep my toe in the kidney transplant kind of side of things as well. And then I started learning about obesity and about the disease process it is and how it literally takes over a person's life and their health, all the systems that it attacks, all of the comorbidities and other conditions that it predisposes them to. It's not just it's quality of life, like being able to socialize it. It hits like every aspect of a person's life. And then in addition to that, the fact that I knew nothing about it and realizing that I'm part of the problem was completely mortifying. So started studying more about it, started meeting you guys, right? Started meeting my patients and seeing the work that needed to be put in, going to conferences, things like that, and the way that bariatric surgery could be used as a tool to treat this chronic disease and truly transform a person's life. It was life-changing for me as well. And so kind of moving forward, that's been my passion. I want to change that mindset for everyone. I want to raise awareness. Everyone should know how much I didn't know. Because we didn't talk about it in nursing school. Maybe a paragraph here or there-ish. Medical school was the same. So I was a coordinator actually at a program for the University of Oklahoma. And we started bringing all of our surgical residents through the obesity medicine side and the surgical side. So they all had to learn about obesity and about what it does to a person and what, the treatment options are. And I would love to see that go to more medical programs. But until then, they got me in my big mouth and I'm going to keep talking about it and thrilled, with ASMBS and that being kind of the governing body really for metabolic and bariatric surgery. And the passion that they're showing and that we're showing as we're coming together to spread that kind of terminology, flip that narrative, and really advocate for care.
Yes. Before we hit record, we were talking about just the shockingly small number of people who are battling the disease of obesity, but who have actually onboarded treatment, right? It's just 1%. 1% of the people who qualify actually go through with it. And we were talking about, right, the shame and the stigma that we think is preventing people from doing that. With all of your experience with patients, really in so many different areas of medicine, is that what you see as the largest barrier to care? Is it that shame and stigma that surrounds the disease or treatment?
It is a very big player. It's definitely not all encompassing, I don't think, because I think we have to realize that different genders, different ethnicities, different cultures, right? They experience kind of what obesity is in different ways. But I do think even that in some ways ties back to that, the narrative that causes shame for other people, right? Because there's a difference between living in a larger body and in what we see in the mirror and the disease of obesity, because you don't see obesity in the mirror. But the general public thinks they do, right? They think if I look at someone that's shopping in this section or that looks larger or is squeezing into a booth, they definitely have obesity. And then there's this body positivity movement that says you should just embrace it. It's not a big deal. And there has to be some balance in that. And so learning to understand what obesity is, spreading kind of that awareness and the fact that it isn't what I'm seeing in the mirror. And then on the other side, that treatment is not cosmetic is going to be critical, I think, to moving forward.
I relate to that more than I can even express. That was the taking the reins and seeing each stage of what you just said, going from it's all in my head, it's my fault, I can't stick to a diet, or all of that, to screw it, I'm going to embrace my big body. I did that for about a year, crept all the way up to my highest weight before I realized, what am I doing? Like, why is body positivity? And listen, you guys know, if you're longtime listeners, I'm all about body love and accepting our bodies for what they are. But in some respects, that body positivity got me to my highest weight, and it got me to where my obesity was rampant, to an excess. And so then hitting that realization that I need more treatment. I need to talk about this. And that was just when, April and Jason had just started their podcast, East to West, WLS, back in the day. There were just starting to be these conversations. And so I'm just excited to see we have a long way to go. And also we've come so far already, just in the 15 years that I've been fighting for my own treatment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You're fighting for your life, right? And your health and your family. And I love one of the things that you said. I think it's so important to say it out loud, right? Mm-hmm. Because what we allow shame to do and keeping us silent keeps us in kind of that denial pattern, right? If we can't talk about it, then we try and pretend it's not there. And we try and make it okay in different ways, as opposed to taking it out, looking at it and treating it. But then also with that, when you do talk about it and you get that negative pushback from people that are saying, well, you just need to eat less and exercise more while you're starving yourself and hitting the gym every day, it definitely negates kind of that decision to talk about it and seek treatment. So there's this constant tension that shouldn't be there. Why is it okay? Why is it still okay to make anyone feel bad about this? And you don't know anything about them. We talk about it in bullying in any other sense, right? Mm-hmm. You don't know why that boy is crying. You don't know why, that girl is, wearing sunglasses or is, more, manly or aggressive or whatever. And it's not okay to talk about that. But if someone wants to talk about seeking treatment for obesity, immediately it's, well, she just doesn't have any willpower.
Yeah.
Why? What the heck? Why is that okay? That has got to change. It's negligent on the healthcare side, I think, and it's criminal on the general populace side, and it's not accepted anywhere else. I have no idea why we can't move that marker, but we will move it. We just need everyone to kind of come together and be willing to speak out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there. There has been plenty of times, I think, in anybody's life who is working through, suffering from the disease of obesity. you did work up the courage one day to say something to a primary care, a family doctor, right? And the response was eat less, move more, which you have heard constantly your entire life. And that messaging absolutely just kind of shuts you down. And it can lead to this place of thinking that, well, this is just cosmetic, right? Like I just want to lose weight so I look differently. Even though we know deep down, that's the least of our concerns. We are actually terrified for the longevity of our life, for the quality of our life. But it's this big mixed pot of shame and blame and guilt. And well, this is just cosmetic, or this is the easy way out, or my sister's brother's aunt's nephew's neighbor had it. And oh my gosh, they gained all their weight back. We hear all of these horror stories and we throw it in this pot and we just keep mixing it up. But like you said, if we're not talking about anything that we're experiencing on the inside, it's never going to change. And to get the fuel or the bravery that you need to say the scary thing out loud takes a lot. And after saying it to so many people for so many years, you're just like, I'm just not going to talk about this anymore because I already know what they're going to say. And I've done that. I do that and it doesn't help.
Right. And I tell my patients the fact that they're sitting in my office, the fact that they've called our program shows me that they've chosen to take a step of bravery. And it's sad that that's what it is, but it is, right? Because most of them, I'll have them sit and tell me, I had an earache and I went to my primary care doctor and they said, well, if you weighed less, this wouldn't happen. So you probably need to eat less, you need to exercise more, and maybe they get a drop for their ears. And at some point they just stop going. Like statistically, people that battle obesity don't do routine healthcare. They do everything they can to stay out of a doctor's office. Can't tell you how many of our patients don't have a PCP, right? Because they're tired of going in for anything that has anything to do with their health and walking out being told, well, you need to lose some weight. It's not the way that I guarantee they were taught to practice, right? They didn't go to medical school and, oh, by the way, if someone comes in and they look like they weigh more than they should, you should tell them to eat less and exercise more. But it's the culture we live in, and it's the narrative that they've learned, and it's perpetuated. And I sit there and cry with my patients. It's not okay, and we've got to change it. And you have to be brave to talk about it. And it's going to take a bunch of people being brave. And when that happens, and we're all talking about it, then the other people are going to be ashamed. I was ashamed, and I changed. Everybody can do it. And I didn't think I was a problem, right? I think that's critical too, right? I had no idea that I had a wrong idea about obesity. I just didn't know anything about it. You know what I mean? And so I don't know that a lot of it, I feel like at this point it's talked about enough, maybe that they know a little. They've got an inkling, they have to, I would hope. But a lot of people don't know. It's that implicit bias, right? They don't understand what it is that they're doing, what their words are doing, what deciding to talk about a person's weight is doing to the person that's sitting there. So let's ask, can we have these conversations? Let's learn, let's take some courses on how to have these conversations with people and build trust before we start just assuming things.
Yeah.
Yes.
I had a conversation in the BariNation support community with a pre-op member. I host a beginner bariatrics meetup every week for us to just have these types of conversations, right? And the topic came up of, why should I have to be the one, right? Of like, why do I have to be the one to tell my surgeon or my PCP how to act? And you shouldn't. That's the first thing is like, I think we can all acknowledge like, well, you shouldn't have to. And also, this is that bravery that you're talking about, Carah, of, knowing that you deserve care, knowing that you deserve a high quality care and asking for that quality care as a patient. And the more patients, right, that hone in on that bravery and can just say what they need, the more hopefully providers will be more in tune with obese patients and understand how to speak to us. But it's hard and it takes a lot of bravery, and it shouldn't be us, but also it's us. So we gotta put on our bravery hats a little bit.
Right.
Yeah. And I think it's important to know too, that you don't have to stick with the primary care doctor that's making you feel that shame. Right. So we encourage the people that are coming to our program. If you had a bad experience, well, let's talk about some that you won't have that experience with. Let's find enough physicians and physician groups start losing that number of patients, and they take their family with them. They're going to have to sit down and be like, what's going on? Like, why is this going this way? Why is their practice booming and all my patients are going there? Well, let's have that conversation. So we encourage our patients to say, no, I'm not coming back to you. Yep. I'm not going to deny myself care, but I'm going to get it from someone that's actually going to treat me as a person and not me as a disease, right? Which is where that person first language comes in so strongly, right? It's not an adjective. It's a noun.
Yes.
It's a disease state. Let's talk about it that way.
Bingo. We talk often, every day in the BariNation membership community about this. You are allowed to try on your primary care providers, your bariatric surgeons, your care team, like you try on a pair of Levi's. And it might take you a while, but when you find the perfect fit, you find the perfect fit. And that is the person that is truly going to partner with you to walk alongside you and learn from you. And I so appreciate you saying that. As patients, I think for decades, when you are living in a larger body, you automatically get assigned a lower IQ, right? Like you clearly don't know how to eat right. Like you're lazy, you fill in the blank, right? And when you are living on this planet in a larger body, you just automatically get assigned that lower IQ. And for decades, many patients just accepted that, right? They just kind of, you're in the lab coat, I'm not, right? You're going to tell me what's wrong. Well, in this modern era, we see this emergence of patients like us who are willing to say, this isn't right. And this is a disease and I deserve better and my friends deserve better and the community deserves better. And when we are allowed to gather in these safe places, right, like BariNation, we can have these conversations with one another. And that conversation helps us grow our courageous muscle. It helps us step into this place of bravery. We get to practice having these conversations with our peers before we go and have them with these experts. So it's almost like, even though when you get to that appointment, it's just you and the provider. But in the back of your mind, I have a nation of people who got my back. I practice this conversation up and down so many times, and I know what I want to say and what I need to say. And when we're able to practice that, we see shifts because we've got hundreds of members that have come to us and said, I dumped my doctor. I went in to talk to them about this and they told me eat less and move more. And I was literally like, okay, bye. Never coming back to you again. How could you sit here with a straight face and tell me that I'm battling a disease and your prescription is eat less and move more? No. Right. So there is a lot of power in flexing that bravery muscle. There's a lot of power in us as patients, educating ourselves on what the disease of obesity is, that it is, while outwardly people might know that we're suffering from it, what's actually going on is internal. And that facet, that every facet of life that it is impacting, we need to understand that, because the more educated we are, the more we can educate others. And yeah, you're right. It sucks that we're the ones, but you know what? It's probably the best thing that we're the ones educating others on what we know as our lived patient experience. Because for too long, doctors have said, well, no, that's not really what's going on. Yes, it is really what's going on. And if you won't partner with me on this, then I'm going to go find somebody else who will. So Carah, where else do you see, or how do you see this crisis of care unfolding in our nation or in the world today?
I feel like in a lot of places, like there's a big dichotomy, right? Because especially with the kind of the research and the growth of like anti-obesity medications that are out there now, people are feeling more comfortable saying, oh, I don't like this, so I'm going to take this medication, and saying it loud. Kelly Clarkson, came out saying that she was doing it, and Oprah, and everyone at the beginning was like, oh, that's so great, we're talking about this. But unfortunately, I fear that we're talking about it in a wrong way. And a lot of the conversation and that narrative is still being tied to the cosmetic piece of it, right? because any Tom, Dick, and Harry right now can prescribe these OMMs that are compounded or whatever. They're popping up everywhere. And so people are taking them, not because they have the disease of obesity, but because they don't like how they look in the mirror, which is part of the narrative that needs to shift, right? To really emphasize that what we're treating is not the mirror. We're treating a disease process, right? Something on the inside. And also, we're not just going and taking a medication or having a surgery, because that's where it, I feel like, kind of grows that narrative that this is a shortcut. And that's not what we're doing. If you're going to a practice that has an obesity medicine program, that has providers that are educated in the disease of obesity, you're not just going and getting a prescription or filling out a form and getting something mailed to you. You're having nutrition education. You're probably seeing a psychologist. You're probably incorporating sports medicine, because we recognize that as that weight's going down, right, that's changing the way that your body is dealing with nutrients, changing the way that your body is, processing those nutrients. It's burning muscle here. It's not necessarily burning fat. So I feel like that it's a mixed bag in terms of, what that has brought in terms of being able to talk about, maybe I don't want to live in a large body anymore. That's not what obesity is. So it's a very frustrating situation, I think, for a lot of us that are really advocating for a change in the understanding of what obesity is. People are losing all this weight. Their skin looks like it's falling off. Muscle kind of looks like it's sagging. I've had patients that have come in, we look at body composition in my clinic. And I've had patients come in that have lost a significant amount of weight, right? But when we look at it on the body composition side, that visceral fat, which is what we know is the fat that's, surrounding those internal abdominal organs, leading to those additional disease processes, has either stayed the same or gotten higher, and their muscle mass has gone down. So congratulations, you're wearing a different size, but you're not healthier in any way, shape, or form. And then on that flip side, I had a patient come in the other day and cry when she stepped on the scale because that number did not change. And I printed out the body composition analysis, that BIA, and we looked at it together. And she had lost 2 liters. That's it. You've seen the 2 little bottles of Coke, right? 2 liters of visceral fat had gone down. Her body fat percentage was down, and her skeletal muscle mass had gone up by 10 pounds.
Oh my gosh.
Her body
That's
is
incredible.
Changing, not just by the scale.
Yeah.
But measurements are changing, and her health is changing. Yeah. Right? She's no longer having to treat diabetes like she was before. She's going way down on her hypertension medications, because we know that those are metabolic conditions that are affected by the disease of obesity.
Yeah.
So when we're treating it and treating it well, that person's getting healthier. So it's understanding this is not a disease of the scale.
No.
This is not a cosmetic treatment, right? We're treating health. And it makes a difference when you look at it that way.
Yeah. There were a lot of moments, with the Oprah special and everything within the BariNation support community. We had a lot of discussions around it. And for me, my thoughts were exactly that, Carah, that cool. I'm glad that we're discussing obesity more in mainstream media. And also, I could just feel, it felt like 12-year-old me watching Oprah after going to Weight Watchers with my mom. Like it was just kind of the same messaging, just in a different form. And I'm really hopeful that we can get to that place of discussing obesity as a disease and not as a cosmetic situation. We're just not there yet. So who knows? But these conversations are what propel us forward. And I know that. And I think everyone listening knows that. But man, sometimes you watch those and you're like, but that's not what it's used for. This isn't what it's for.
Oh my God.
Exactly. And they hold a lot of promise, right? Yeah. They can do so much good. But we're only going to give it to you if. Yes. You know what I mean? So that's in itself its own issue as well. First, they've exploded. It's been such a rapid expansion of understanding and research and treatment. And so now what do we do once that person reaches the goal weight or whatever. You know what I mean? Like they're in a healthy BMI. They're no longer treating those comorbid conditions. Then what?
Mm-hmm.
Well, right now it's, well, I guess we just stop taking it. Well, guess what? When you stop treating a disease process, it comes right back. You still have a disease process, right? And you're not treating it anymore. I'm not going to stop taking insulin because suddenly I figured out what to take when I eat and what to take on the routine.
Yeah.
And now my blood sugar is stable, so I'm going to stop taking my insulin, right? No. Like that's completely counterintuitive. That's kind of where we are with medications and with insurances wanting to cover it and choosing and being able to opt out of covering obesity. What the heck is that? It blows my mind. But then, saying I'm going to we'll cover this med if you have diabetes with obesity, if you have sleep apnea with obesity, if, like, when are we going to get to the point that we treat the disease that's causing all these peripheral diseases? Right? It doesn't make any sense to me that we're waiting until health declines, until avoidable conditions are developed, because we just don't want to say out loud that obesity is a disease. When research shows that when we're 12 years in to the American Diabetes Association the American Medical Association defining it as a disease, 12 years. I don't understand. It's a mixed bag and it's very frustrating. And I can imagine it's definitely not just me that feels that. Like you said, exciting to talk about it, but like I feel like what harm are we doing? What eating disorders maybe are we causing? Because again, we're celebrating the weight loss. And then you can't have the medication anymore. And I have to keep this weight loss. What am I doing for it? Because I don't have that psychology backing me. I haven't been equipped to handle that mentally. And we know that, that mental health, behavioral health is an incredibly important component. I haven't learned to eat correctly because I'm not hungry. And so I just don't eat. We had a patient when we first started prescribing, I believe it was Mounjaro when it came out, that came in and was living on Diet Coke. That was it. And they felt great. God. Oh my gosh, I feel so good. I'm losing all this weight. It was like 2 weeks in or 3 weeks in, they've lost 17 pounds or something, pre-op, on this medication to work on, some pre-op weight loss. Yeah. How many of those people are out there? What are the odds it's only the one patient that we happen to catch in our clinic and then learn to develop, a plan around it, a programmatic approach to, using obesity management medications? They're not getting it everywhere else. So what harm are we causing by it? What kind of relapse are we causing in some thinking processes for people that are actually reaching out and trying to treat their obesity? Yeah.
I have a sneaking suspicion that 10 years from now, we're going to see massive health issues, complications, right? Things are going to go off the rails because people have been taking this medication without true doctor care supervision. And they were doing it for cosmetic reasons, thinking that because they look healthy, they are healthy. No, just because you look healthy does not mean that you are healthy. And these medications can do much greater harm than good in the long run, which is why it just baffles me that so many people are totally fine with going out of pocket, going into debt, going to extreme lengths to secure a medication that might not even be what it says it is. But they won't even consider the gold standard in obesity care, which is bariatric surgery. And it's probably covered by your insurance. But we don't want to go there. We don't want to look at that because it's too,
that's
I
extreme.
don't know. Right. Extreme. Right. It's dangerous. It's all of these things that are unequivocally, factually not true at all. But that is no. But I'm going to do this, which is actually more dangerous, more extreme, all won't actually lead to health. It baffles us. It absolutely baffles us, especially when we as patients and millions of others at this point are sharing how wonderful their life is after surgery. We are living proof that it works. We are living proof that it is not as extreme as what you think it is, that it is not dangerous, that life after surgery is joyful and healthy. And yet it's so difficult to break through that barrier.
I think it's important though to point out that there are benefits to these medications, right? The FDA approved medications that have gone through the trials, that have done the testing, that there are uses for that, even sometimes for patients who have had bariatric surgery, in the long term, right? Because everybody's journey is different. And, some people need to treat it in a little bit different way. Everyone's not on the same insulin regimen. Everyone's not on the same chemotherapy or radiation treatment, right? But we're saying they're treating cancer. We're saying they're treating diabetes. So everyone needs a process specific to them. Their journey is going to look a little different. But again, that emphasizes the importance of connecting with the program, connecting with a team that's going to get to know you as a person, not a pamphlet with this questionnaire that you filled out and a medication that we mailed to you. So that's where I get really concerned with the obesity management medications and the way that they're being used and distributed at this point in time, is that it's all going to get lumped in when those complications come out, when those concerns that you're mentioning, which I'm sure are going to happen and come out. It's all going to kind of get thrown away with bathwater, baby bathwater, all of it together, because there hasn't been that education and that understanding and that careful and appropriate prescription writing and program following, patient following, and things like that. So,
it is a yes and, right? I had bariatric surgery 5.5 years ago. Lost 100 pounds, experienced a little bit of weight recurrence with the return of comorbidities. And that was the thing that concerned me. Yeah, I wasn't thrilled that I was up in weight, but what was really terrifying is my A1C was up. I was getting to that point where I was pre-diabetic again. That is terrifying. And I was prescribed a GLP-1 by my medical team, right? And I went through exactly what you talked about, right? I had the education because I have BariNation. So I knew that background stuff, but with that adjunct treatment, I was able to reverse my comorbidity. And a happy side effect of that was I also lost some of my excess weight again, but then lost access, gained access. I've been doing this yo-yo forever. And it is extremely frustrating that I feel like, right, if I was a cancer patient and they pulled my chemo, it would be unheard of. But yet, because I'm a patient with obesity, you can pull that adjunct treatment. Thank God I have onboarded surgery, because I know this tool, this is never going away. And I can always tap into this. And without my bariatric surgery, had I been on medication and lost access to it, I would have absolutely regained all of my weight and then some. So to know that I've onboarded this tool, that I always have it at my disposal, makes me feel not as hopeless as I think I would have if I was just on the medication and not had that care team. It's a very challenging place for anybody with obesity to be in. But surgery is the only thing that can't be taken away from you.
It is, but also as you're looking at it, metabolic adaptation is a real thing. Right? Yeah. You're treating a disease process for which there is not a cure. And I'm very real with my patients as they're sitting in there with me. Like, you're correct. This is not an easy button. And they're like, oh, I know. This is not a magic pill. Oh, I know. But you're treating a disease, right? So your body thinks that this higher weight's where it needs to be. And it adjusts those hormones, it adjusts that metabolism, and it tries to figure out a way around those changes that happen when intrinsically, right? When you have that bariatric surgery. And so for some people, that's going to happen faster. It's going to happen slower. It's going to happen different. Everyone's a little bit different. If all you're doing is medication and then suddenly you're not taking those anymore, all that time you're taking the medication, if you have the disease of obesity, your body's trying to figure out a way around it, right? So then you're starting from a different starting point, even then when you go to bariatric surgery, right? And then if you've had the bariatric surgery and you've done great, and we're all required to make good choices, right? Every single one of us is going to have the, consequence to the choices that we make. But that's me, that's you, that's everybody. If you're doing the right thing, you've been trained, you know how to use this tool, and then that weight starts coming back or those comorbidities start coming back, that voice in your head and the general public that are all big jerks are saying, well, that failed. Told you so, right? And because that's what everybody else is saying too, it's easy to believe. And then it's difficult a lot of times. I'm very glad and proud that you stepped up and you said, I need something else. Because a lot of patients, because of that shame, blame, fear, sense of failure, don't, right? They let it come back and they say, it's my fault. Something else that didn't happen. And, I tell my patients all the time, if you're on blood pressure medication and it's working and then it stops working, you don't say, oh, well, I guess blood pressure medicine's not for me. No, you go back to your doctor and you're like, hey, this isn't working anymore. I need a different plan. And obesity is no different. It's a chronic disease. If you're not getting the results you want anymore and you weren't, and you're doing the right thing, then the public is wrong, which we knew to start with. It's not your fault. Come back to your team that wants to work with you, that wants to understand you, and let's figure out a plan that's going to work for you, right? That we can treat your disease in a way that your body and your metabolism and your metabolic kind of system understands, and we can treat it right. But we can't do that if you're sitting at home. And the general public is saying, well, it's your fault. You should stay at home. Even more people aren't coming, which just emphasizes that need. We've got to get that education out. Have to understand this is a disease process. There's no shame in that.
Yep.
If someone else develops a disease, they're going to ask for treatment. Why shouldn't you?
Yes. Nat and I we are so thrilled to hear you say this. We say this every day. We say this every day in BariNation, right? You are battling a disease.
Absolutely.
And weight recurrence, right? We are really trying to use the patient positive language. This is not regain. Sure. Okay. You've regained weight, but what you're experiencing is a recurrence of your disease. This is weight recurrence, and this is a recurrence of it just means that your disease is back in action despite all of your best efforts. It has nothing to do with you. You are doing everything right. You are focusing on movement, mindset, metabolic wellness. The disease is progressing and you need to onboard new treatment. That's all this is. That's all this is. And to be able to go to a safe place and just say those things, and to be met not with what the public is saying, but to be met with unconditional understanding and love. That's where people know there is something different.
Right.
It's why it's so important that these conversations are happening. So important.
And it's what every one of us expects when we're seeking treatment for whatever it is that we're seeking treatment.
Yeah.
Why is it different for obesity? Why? It blows my mind that I can sit back here, in all of my pride and self-righteousness and say, well, I have XYZ disease process, so I'm going to treat that. And my neighbor says, hey, we can ride together. I'm going to talk to someone about my obesity. And I can be like, right? Like roll my eyes at it. Like the same people that are seeking treatment for whatever it is that they have because they don't have obesity feel like they're in a different, like they have a moral high ground of some point. It doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. Yeah. And not that it has to, but it should make sense to everybody. Like step back, look in the mirror. Like if I had a disease process, would I want to treat it? Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I would. Right. So everybody should have that right. Nobody should feel shame for that.
Nope. Well, and maybe this is a great way to transition, because while sometimes this disease can feel a little bit hopeless as patients, right? We run into these moments where the work gets really hard, the journey just sucks, and we run out of energy to do it. And we just need to we need to take a break. You have this awesome way of describing to your patients why sometimes it feels easier, right? And it kind of should. The whole goal of treatment is you make treating the disease a little bit easier, right? So it makes sense that right after surgery, your first year, right? It's often referred to as the honeymoon. It is easier. It feels easy because guess what? You onboarded treatment. And the goal of treatment is that it becomes easier to treat your disease. But then as you say, the disease progresses, life changes, you age, things stop working. We run into this wall. And as patients, we go, oh my God, what am I doing wrong? Why is this happening? You have an awesome way of talking about this to your patients. And I'm so excited for you to share with us your metaphor for it.
Okay. Never really thought I'd be talking about it to a general public, but I do talk about it with my patients all the time. I was sitting at home actually. One day we had like a rainy weekend where I didn't get to do my normal lawn care, things like that. It was like middle or close to the end of the next week, and the lawn was atrocious. And I'm out there like every weekend, like clockwork. I'm mowing it and edging. I'm doing all the things I need to do, take pride in that. And I'm like, oh, I didn't get to do it last weekend and now it's terrible. And I'm like, you know what? Obesity is kind of the same way, right? I'm like, because I'm always thinking like, how can I make it a word picture that's going to make sense to my patients? Because I'm simple that way. I think if I can tie it to something, then I'm going to remember it and it makes sense. If it makes sense, I'm going to do it. So I was like, let's think about obesity as a chronic disease state, which is something that's so difficult to get into people's minds sometimes, right? Kind of like the lawn. I said, I think of the lawn like a chronic disease, right? So you can step into your new home and have this lawn that is already atrocious. You get a fixer-upper, you've got to work on it, right? Or you step in and you've got, for however long, this beautiful lawn. It looks good. You buy it, you're good. But at some point, because you have this lawn, and because a lawn's going to do what a lawn's going to do, you've got to treat the lawn, right? You've got to mow it. You've got to weed eat it. You've got to fertilize it, do all the things. And so I talk to my patients about, the disease of obesity is somewhat like the lawn. Think of it like the lawn. And then think about those tools like your lawnmower, your fertilizer, the edger, whatever it is that you get as treatment for that disease process. I said, but when you get bariatric surgery, like we're teaching you how to use that tool. We're teaching you how and when to use the fertilizer, to use the weeder, all the things that you need to do. And you learn and and then you come and you have bariatric surgery. It's like you get all those tools and they're yours. You've learned how to use them, that you now own them. They're your tools, but you also have this chronic disease. You have this lawn that is also yours. But for that first, 9 to 15 months, it's different for everybody. It's almost like we also send you home with a lawn guy, right? And he's using those tools for you. The lawn is no less yours. The tools are still yours. You still know how to use them, but you're not having to work really hard to get the effects that you want. And all of a sudden, you've got a yard of the month sign in your yard, right? You're taking selfies with it. People are asking, what are you doing? That's amazing. I saw it last week. That's some transformation and you're proud and you're like, yeah, but not having to do a whole lot to make that happen. But then that second season rolls around and now that lawn guy that came with the warranty, whatever, is on your neighbor's yard, right? He's no longer using the tools on your lawn. Still your tools. You still own them. You still know how to use them. You still have that chronic disease. You still have that lawn and the lawn's going to do what the lawn's going to do. It doesn't matter how much happened in that previous year if those tools are in the shed getting dusty, if it rained the weekend before and you didn't get to use them, right? Whether it's through intention or something that was kind of outside your own control, the yard's going to do what the yard's going to do. The lawn's going to grow up. It's going to kind of cut into the edges, up in the cracks of the sidewalk. Someone's walking their dog, they piddle, something blows in from someone else's yard or a field across the street. You have control over some things. You don't have control over some things. But at the end of the day, you have a lawn and a lawn's going to do what a lawn's going to do. You have tools. If you're not using them, they can't treat whatever that is. So we talk about, am I using my tools? They're mine. Am I doing everything that I need to be doing with those tools to treat the lawn? If I've laid something down, we go through what I call the ABCs of bariatric surgery. That's what we call them in our program, is like the instruction manual. Have you laid down any of those things? Physical activity, behavior patterns and choices, community. Are you now in kind of a toxic environment? Sleep, stress, all of those things play a role in your long-term success, right? Have I laid any of those down? I haven't. I'm using all of my tools, but there's something that's still, like I said, blown in on the wind or whatever that was not maybe affecting it before, that's affecting it now. Do you just say, well, I tried, and sit down? No, you're going to fight for that lawn. You're going to fight for the beauty that you had before. And you're going to go back to whatever lawn store that you use. And you're going to say, this is my problem now. What can what can you do? What can you teach me? Is there something else I could take home? Is there another tool? Is there another spray that I can use to treat this condition here? Mm-hmm. And if you use it and you do all the things you're supposed to do again, you're treating that chronic disease with a chronic treatment because there's no cure for that. You can't fix your lawn enough that you don't ever have to do it again, right? You have to continue to use those things. So we just talk about it in that sense. Like sometimes there are things that you can do behaviorally, sometimes things that you can change that you laid down. Me too, right? But if I don't have a disease and you do, it's going to affect us differently, right? So and that's what everyone I feel like needs to really grasp is that I'm beholden to my choices as well, right? Every single one that's looking at someone with obesity saying, well, you need to eat less, that's eating a candy bar for lunch. Like, that's kind of a problem there, right? But we don't look at it that way because we don't visually see the outcome of a disease because we don't have that same disease. With the lawn, if you've got the lawn, you've got the disease of obesity, you treat it like you're supposed to, you're going to get a certain result. You stop treating it, you're going to get a certain result. You're treating it with everything you have, something else happens, you might need something else to treat it so that you can get the result you want. But it's a constant process. And that's kind of how we talk about it in our program. What have I laid down? What have I been consistent with? Intentional behavior change is imperative to your long-term success. Continuing to use your team, that's us. We want to be a part of that process as part of your overall success. If something blows in on the wind on your lawn, you're not ashamed, right? You know you're doing everything you can. You're mad. Dadgummit, I need something else. And you're going to go to that team that told you all this stuff that now is just a bunch of bunk because this thing flew in and now the lawn doesn't look like it should. And you're going to go and you're going to demand something different so you can fix it. And then you're going to use it. And then you're going to be proud. You're like, figured it out. But our bodies, we tend to look at it a little different sometimes. So for me, that word picture is helpful. Some of my patients say it is. And that's what we use in our program.
I love it so much. I literally just had a conversation with my cousin. She wouldn't mind that I'm talking about this. She had a baby a year ago, right? New motherhood, your priorities shift to your baby. She texted me this morning and she just goes, she called it regain. I've had some regain. I'm back to it, blah, blah, blah. And we had a big conversation and she goes, and I still have my tool. And I was like, you absolutely still have your tool. Like, how can I support you? So this analogy, I'm going to, as soon as we're done recording, I'm going to be like, okay, so it's like a lawn and because it makes total sense. As you were talking, I just put all the things together.
So I tie that back too in terms of that first year, right? So you're not having to work really hard to get the results that you want. But if you're not practicing, if you're not going out talking to the lawn guy, how are you doing this? What are we doing? This is how I was taught to use this tool. Then when you get to that second season, you're out of practice. And it's really kind of deceitful to yourself to think I've lived, 15, 30, 60 years behaving in engaging my environment in a certain way. And because I got this tool, now I know how to use it and I'm going to be great at it. Yep. And so that's where I think people sometimes find themselves a little behind the eight ball is because it is so easy at the very beginning, right? You do lose that weight at the beginning. And it's kind of a slap in the face when all of a sudden you're not doing anything really different. You don't feel like you're doing anything really different, but suddenly the results are a little different. Oh, I still have the tool. I still know how to use it, but it's getting dusty in the shed. Yep. Right? Because my buddy that was using it before isn't using it anymore. So we talk about it in that way to really emphasize learning and engaging those new behavioral, practices, whether it's, around food or around your friends. Everything in our culture revolves around food. We talk about that too. Like, are we eating before? Are we eating after? What are we eating there? Do I like that restaurant? If I don't like that restaurant, should I bring something with me? Right? It's Tuesday. We should have tacos. It's Friday. We're having a get together. Grandma's making pie. I'm going to offend her if I don't eat it. Everything revolves around food. So learning to engage that differently, even when you don't feel like you really have to, I think is really critical to learning that intentional discipline change. That's not only going to affect you, it affects me. It affects all of us eventually. We all have to make good choices. So.
Yes. When you first told me this and in our initial conversation, when you and I had just met, it literally blew my mind. And I was just like, oh my God. we are all visual people, right? Nat and I's background is education. And it sticks up here when you can connect it to something that you not only know and you're familiar with, but you can see it in your mind. And this metaphor was just like mind blowing. So I was so excited to share it with Jason and Nat, because I knew, especially you, Nat, you're like, oh yes. Right. But when you think about it, right, when you think about it from this perspective, it just clicks. And the thing that I think is so powerful about this, and I can speak to this, and I know not everybody can speak to this. We have all done something in our life that we were so excited about, and it worked. It worked, right? And when that thing works that we were so hopeful for, there is this period of joy. There is this period of just like, you are high on life. There is just this feeling that literally floats you, you feel like you're floating in air and nothing can go wrong. There is nothing wrong with living life at that heightened state of joy for a little bit of time. Sure. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. And that joy just makes everything else feel like it just falls to the wayside, right? Because that's what it's supposed to feel like. That's what it's supposed to do. Mm-hmm. And in that first year after surgery, now I know you remember this, you're just like, oh my God, I'm doing nothing. You are. And it's working, but you're at this elevated level. Mm-hmm. And when Grady and I moved into our new house, when we built this home, we paid to have our landscape done perfectly. And for the first year, this was like take a picture, put it in a magazine, right? Nat, Nat remembers she visited me when I had just moved in, and it was like, this place is pristine. And you're like, I know, it is the best. And it doesn't require a lot of maintenance because it's brand new. It's brand new and it's just getting rooted and it's kind of taking care of itself, and it doesn't require a lot of maintenance. But then all of a sudden, holy crap, we hit that 1 year and it was like, this place is a freaking jungle, and all of a sudden it is out of control. And oh my gosh, I have to put in so much work to maintain it. So is the bariatric life. Like, it is just the perfect metaphor for what we go through as patients.
Well, I'm glad it resonated.
Oh my gosh.
It really is. And we talk a lot in the BariNation support community. During that first year, we try to, I don't want to say warn people because that makes it sound scary, but we try to encourage folks, like, come to meetups, come to support groups. Even if you're feeling that on top of the world, I'm good kind of feeling, because these tools that you're going to acquire and learn throughout, it's exactly as you said, Carah, you're watching the lawn guy taking care of the lawn so that you can do it later on. And that's, hopefully what we can instill. And I think we have instilled in the BariNation support community, that support is there for a reason, because you're going to need it. Those tools, you're going to need it. It might be an anti-obesity medication down the line. It might be attending support groups regularly for a year. It's all beneficial. And that's what that analogy really speaks to.
Yep. And I really think about, I think about BariNation, and I think about the things that we can learn from our surgical centers, from our surgeons, right? From practitioners like you. It is, how do I use the tool? So now I got the tool. Great. I have no idea how to actually use this. I don't know in what scenario, and I don't know what it really does for. And I think I'm using it, but maybe I'm not using it in the most efficient way. That's the power of community. And that is really the power of learning in community, because everybody's kind of got the same tools, and you're looking around each other going, oh, cool. We got the same tool. We even got the same brand. Do you know how to use this? Cause I'm sure as hell don't. Like, I thought I was supposed to do it this way, but really it goes this way. If you don't have that, you are missing out. You don't actually have what you need. You might have the tool, but you don't know how to use that tool. And if you are not connected with your care team, if you're not connected in community, you're not learning how to use it in the most efficient way that you could.
Right. And that's one of my favorite things, I think, in support group is when we do a blended. So we have pre and post-op patients, and hearing our post-op patients say, oh, well, I did this and this worked for me. And the people are like, oh, and the way that they can feed off of each other. And we talk about that when they're in the program, like you think you don't. you think it's not for me. I don't need this. That's why we do require it beforehand so that they can see. I can tell you all day long, but I'm not walking that journey, right? I study it. I look at the research, but there's something about that lived experience that is just completely different. And so I love hearing my patients say, this is how I use my tool. No, I do it this way. Exactly. To your point, it is fantastic.
It's just amazing.
That's how it is. I'll never forget. I didn't track my macros for the first 2 years post-op, and I experienced some reoccurrence. And April had been tracking and learning how to track. And I texted her. I made the decision I'm going to start tracking. And then the next day I was going out for a fun night out with friends. And I knew we were going to get pizza for dinner. Like that was going to be our dinner. And I frantically texted her, April, and I said, how the heck am I supposed to track pizza if I don't know what's in it? And she just goes, just look up a slice of pepperoni pizza and track that. It's not about, what exactly you're tracking. It's you're tracking. And that's exactly how it is. I'm going to use this tool this way. This is how I'm doing it. And now to this day, if I pick up tracking for a month, I think, oh yeah, April just says just track whatever, as best as you can get it. But it helps us, we talk about lowering the temperature. It helps us lower the temperature, lower the stress on utilizing those tools. And that's what's important.
Right. We talk a lot about it's not about perfection, right? It's about that intention. Yeah. I'm deciding I'm going to do this. And, this isn't a journey of I can't. We talk about that as well, because if you tell yourself, I'm going to do this now because I can't later, you're setting yourself up, right? For defeat and for frustration and for hurdles. So we talk about, changing that mindset. I'm choosing something different, right? I'm choosing to track something. I'm choosing to learn how to do this. It's all a learning process and a growing process. And I know even for me, when I track my food, I'm a lot more careful about what I choose to eat, what I choose to put in my mouth. And there are studies out there, I can send them to you guys, specific to the difference in sustained weight loss when you're people who track even just a couple of times a month, to people who don't at all, to people who engage in support groups versus people who don't engage in support groups. We're talking scholarly articles, peer-reviewed, current, all the things. People who stay on their vitamins versus people who don't. It's all out there. There's a reason behind everything that you're asked to do when you're going through the process. And there's a reason that we want you to keep coming back for perpetuity. I tell my patients, so you're going to go a whole bunch in that first year after surgery, and then every year at least until you die. I want you here forever. We're your team forever. Let us be. We want to walk this journey with you. We want to celebrate that you were able to put on a tennis shoe. I had one patient I'll never forget. She was 24 years old. She hadn't been able to wear tennis shoes. She was wearing slides for a decade. And she bought a pair of tennis shoes. And then she bought a pair of jeans. She hadn't been able to wear jeans. People that aren't in that community, they don't get it. Right? Celebrate it with the community. We want to celebrate it with you. Take that picture of the distance between the end of the booth and the start of your admin.
Oh yeah.
That's big. I'm excited for you. We're going to cheer it. Rah, rah. So
yes.
All the things.
All the things.
Yeah.
Carah, this conversation has been amazing. We have a few other questions we'd like to ask you. We're going to save that for the bonus, but I can't think of a better way to wrap it up by celebrating and just acknowledging there are so many things that we can do along this journey, even when we feel like the system is oppressive, even when we feel like everybody's working against us. When we step back and we ask what is within our control, how we choose to maintain our lawn, that is within our control. And how we choose to celebrate, that is absolutely within our control. Thank you for joining us for this amazing conversation.
Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
Oh, right? I told you. We told you. We're like, just wait. If they would like to continue to connect with you, where can they do that? Where can they reach out to you?
Sure. I'm on LinkedIn. I can share my email address. I give all of my patients my cell phone number, whatever you guys feel comfortable with sharing. Reach out. This is a subject that I can there's probably people that are like, please someone else talk to her about this, because I will talk to anyone who will listen. And I hope that someone takes it and talks to somebody else about it, because if enough of us start saying it, talking about it, and demanding change, it's going to happen.
It's going to happen. And friends, we will make sure that we link her contact information in the description of this episode. So if you open up those show notes, you're going to see her contact information, and we will absolutely get those research studies that she referenced. And we will also link them in our show notes, because that's one of our key missions here at BariNation. We want to connect you with the education that you need to help you find and maintain personal wellness. So just open up those show notes and you'll find all that information linked there. Well, I hope you all are leaving this conversation as inspired and like, oh my God, thinking about long-term maintenance as we are. Carah, thank you again for joining us. This was an amazing conversation.
Yeah, thank you guys.
That wraps up another empowering episode of the BariNation podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, keep the conversation going by joining the BariNation membership community, where you can attend live support events, access on-demand resources, and find a caring community.
Join us at barination.mn.co. If you found this podcast valuable, help us produce it by becoming a $5 monthly supporter at barinationpodcast.com.
And just remember, at the end of the day, you've got this, we've got you, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.